Welcome to another episode on my version of Star Wars Episode 9, which I'm currently calling Balance Revealed. This is the second video, so a link to the first will be in the description below and hopefully in a YouTube card on the screen. Part 1 ended with the revelation of the second Jedi Order that has come out of hiding to confront the First Order, the presence on Naboo in anticipation of a First Order invasion, and Rey's meeting with their leader, Ahsoka Tano. We start out with a meeting involving Ahsoka, Ezra, Kira, and Rey, and some of the Naboo officials, a map of the galaxy shown in the center of the room with a second map showing just how close Naboo is to First Order-controlled territory. The King of Naboo asked when and how the First Order would attack. Ahsoka responded that she had no way of knowing when the First Order would come, but that assuming Naboo launches no attack in orbit, they would take a planetary rotation to establish space superiority. Her plan was to take a small squadron of Jedi fighters up into space to harass the First Order fleet, in the hopes of holding them off until the Resistance can arrive. The King then inquired Rey about the potential fleet the Resistance has acquired. Rey admitted that she knew it was large, but hasn't been briefed about the details of the fleet, stating that she'd have to contact the Resistance Command for more information. The King dismisses this idea due to the risk of the First Order intercepting and decrypting the transmission. After the meeting, Rey asked if they were going to surrender. The King assured her that after the Trade Federation and the Empire, surrendering to the First Order was not an option, and that after the fall of the Empire, Naboo bolstered its military to new heights in its history. Back at the Resistance headquarters, Poe taps Finn to take a team to travel to Bothan space, where the new fleet is being hidden. While there, though, a small First Order fleet arrives. Not wanting to have the Resistance fleet experience too much damage, Finn decides to take a small task force to infiltrate one of the First Order ships. It's a small, short skirmish, but it brought Finn face to face with other stormtroopers. At first, Finn had no problem shooting at them, but one against the wall had his hands shot and ended up grabbing Finn by the head, causing Finn to go into a trance. Fortunately, the skirmish was almost over and the Resistance managed to take control of the ship and start firing at the other two ships. Caught off guard, the other two ships didn't stand much of a chance. Once Finn started to come into his own, a fellow Resistance fighter asked if he was okay. Finn said that he was fine and needed to figure out how to muster the manpower to run the massive fleet. Back on Kylo Ren's ship, Kylo Ren was in a meeting with a few generals, including Hux and, dare I say, since I didn't know he existed before Rise of Skywalker, General Pryde. They were talking about the new Resistance fleet and their recent failed attempt to thwart it. As a result, there was a debate over whether or not to divert some ships from the Naboo invasion force to attack the new Resistance fleet. Kylo Ren insists that the First Order has spent too much time building the Naboo invasion force. Kylo Ren then asked what ramifications might occur if he ordered the fleet to attack Naboo right then and there. Concerns were brought up over the Resistance showing up. Pryde suggested that there were a handful of planets where the First Order could muster up a secondary fleet to defend the first one in case the Resistance shows up. After a few more arguments, Kylo Ren then gives the order to launch the invasion. On Naboo, alarms went off as various forces began to scramble. Shortly, a handful of Naboo fighters took off and were faced with a massive fleet of resurgent Star Destroyers. They were also met by a brand new TIE Fighter type, driven by Kylo Ren, that allowed him to stand and look around the battle. We then see that Rey is in one of the Naboo fighters, commenting that the fighter is definitely the Supreme Leader ship. Ahsoka, another pilot, affirmed and warned that this may be more difficult than she imagined. Indeed, she even managed to shoot at Kylo's ship, but Kylo was able to use his powers to hold off Ahsoka's shots in place, and then proceeded to hit her ship. The shots did no damage, but Ahsoka's shields were dwindling. Ashoka then ordered her ships to merely keep him distracted and to retreat if their shields were reduced to a critical level. Ahsoka eventually reached out to Kylo Ren, asking if he was holding back. Kylo Ren said that he was, due to his desire to recruit Jedi to deal with an imminent threat beyond the First Order. Kylo Ren then asked if his grandfather had told Ahsoka about this threat. Ahsoka didn't answer, but then pointed out that the planet Kylo was about to invade was the final resting place of his grandmother. Kylo retorted that due to the imminent threat that the galaxy faces, he can't let familial connections stop him from preparing the First Order to face this threat. The longer Naboo stands, the weaker the First Order was going to appear and the more vulnerable the entire galaxy will be. After a brief argument between Rey and Kylo Ren over Kylo's actions after Snoke's killing, Rey turns back to the surface. We then cut to a brief scene between Poe and Finn regarding the status of the new fleet and the manpower to control them. Finn reports that the fleet should be ready for deployment within a standard rotation. By the time we get back to Naboo, the First Order was already touching down on the planet. I'm not going to go into too many details about this battle. Odds are, many of these details would change should I ever get the chance to actually make this movie. Suffice to say, this is a massive planetary battle where the First Order is slowly pushing the Resistance back. Jedi, those not actively engaged with a Knight of Ren, were busy hunting down Kylo Ren, whose presence basically heralded a First Order victory in that particular skirmish. Eventually, Kylo was cornered by Ashoka, Rey, Kira, and Ezra. By that time, the Resistance fleet had finally arrived and engaged the First Order Naboo fleet. Within the duel, I envision Kylo Ren using the Force lightning to hold off Rey, Ezra, and Kira back, while controlling his lightsaber with the Force to hold Ashoka back. Later in the duel, he even pulls a Resistance Star Destroyer from combat in an attempt to intimidate his Jedi foes. This isolates Ashoka from the other Jedi, and she and Kylo engage in a bit of fight. Eventually, Kylo Ren is able to break down her Force barrier and stun her with the Force in time for the other Jedi to arrive. Holding Ahsoka Tano hostage, the Jedi surrender and are arrested by First Order troopers. Afterwards, with the battle tilting heavily in the First Order's favor, Kylo Ren is drawn to Padme's burial chambers and, when alone, is confronted by the Force ghost of Anakin Skywalker. And that is where I'm going to end part 2, and I won't lie, writing this script was pretty challenging. So what do you all think of part 2? Am I heading in the right direction? Do you think Kylo Ren is a little OP? Any guesses on this threat beyond the First Order and what it is? What do you think is going to happen in part 3? Leave your thoughts in the comments section down below.